You're listening to the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. Yeah, it's a mouthful. For more great shows like the one you're about to enjoy, visit electronicmediacollective.com. And now, our feature presentation.
This is Randy. In the future, we'll look back at this time exactly, and think, that was when we almost let Trump in the White House.
Wrong.
And this is Jesse. In the future, pumpkin spice will become the American currency of September through November.
We'll have pumpkin spice currency.
It'll taste like not real pumpkins. And mostly cinnamon.
Yeah. To be fair,
Maybe
though,
some clove.
straight up pumpkin taste is not great. I'm not a fan.
Oh, no, yeah.
It's totally the cinnamon that makes pumpkin spice good.
Cinnamon and nutmeg.
They should just make cinnamon everything.
Cinnamon everything.
Yeah.
I'm trying now. I want to think of something that would not be good. Cinnamon. Was it the cinnamon challenge? Like mustard with cinnamon in it.
Ooh. Okay. Yeah. All right. I
Yeah,
changed my stance.
I did it. See, Hershey Kisses with pumpkin spice in it are a terrible idea.
I changed my stance on that position. I take that back.
You can have overload on anything. Tastes like chicken. Not when you're eating ice cream. Chicken flavored ice cream would be horrible.
Ooh, you're right. But cinnamon ice cream's so good. What about cinnamon chicken?
That might be all right. That one. We'll leave that to the jury to decide. That's not how you say that. The jury's out on that one. I'm messing up my old wives' tale sayings. That's not a thing either. I'm going to stop right there.
Welcome to the Grawlix podcast. This is episode 30-something, 30-something.
30-something. Wasn't that a television show in the 80s?
30-something?
Yeah.
34.
Episode 34.
Yep.
The race is on. 50.
If you add in our Bites episodes and the Nights episodes, we are past 50, which makes me feel good. We will be talking about Preacher, Volume 1 this episode. We'll do some TV talk. We will pick the book that we're talking about. Well, you picked the book we'll be talking about next time, but we will let you guys know what that book ended up being.
Yeah.
I think I had a little sway on it this month.
Oh yeah.
I didn't vote on it a bunch, but there hasn't been a whole lot of change on the poll.
No.
Which means, listener, go to grawlixpodcast.com, hit the poll list button, or if you're on the desktop, it'll also be in the right sidebar, and you can vote on the book that we talk about every episode, every Grawlix Prime episode. And, poll list.
Yeah. You decide what we listen to. We don't decide it unless we're the only ones voting.
So, yeah, unless we're the only ones voting. I do throw a vote on there once in a while, but, it's not like an unfair thing. I'm just like, it's been a while. I'll just throw a vote here.
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't. That's probably is breaking the rules, I guess. I mean, we made the rules, but I don't know. It seems like an okay thing to do. I'm not rigging it. I'm not rigging the system.
Yeah, you're not like writing in like a great grandfather's name and putting their vote on Thor, the goddess of thunder.
Yeah, I'm not going and finding dead people's computers and voting from their computers.
Dead people's computers. That's an oddly specific thing to go look for.
A dead person's IP address.
Listen, we're gonna dig in this graveyard until we find a Commodore 64. We're gonna get their we're gonna get their emails.
Listen, if somebody figures out a way to vote on this poll using a Commodore 64, you win.
They do win, yeah.
We'll read it.
You take a picture of yourself sending us a vote on a Commodore 64. Yeah, you win. We'll read that. Whatever it is. It doesn't even matter. It's got to be a comic. Sorry. I will quantify that.
Could be a book. Could be a pamphlet.
No, I'm not reading War and Peace.
Yeah. The Bible or the Quran.
The Quran. Oh, my.
Like, I don't know how to discuss this book. I feel not one way or the other about it.
I feel like I got to take a college course to understand how I could talk about this.
It was fine. There was nothing bad about it.
It offended me deeply and also gave me hope.
I think that's the perfect way to dance around that type of subject.
Oh, boy, I hope so.
Wow. This might be why we don't necessarily open the show promoting the pull list. I don't know why I went that way, but I'm glad we did.
Yes. Now let's promote the Patreon. No, I don't know. What's next?
So we are, peek behind the curtain right off the bat. We're recording this the day before Halloween. It will go up the day before U.S. presidential elections. We don't have to dive too much deeper into that than I already did in the future predictions.
Yep.
But Jesse, you've been a busy beaver.
I don't know. I'm deeply offended, and yet hope. I have been quite busy this month. It's been crazy.
I know you had some things some very interesting things you partook in this month. I guess
partook in, yes. So I think what you're referencing is the fact that Axton and I went to Wichita, Kansas. What was it, 2 weeks ago? And as we're recording this, and we were part of Time Eddy 2 in Wichita, Kansas, which is a Doctor Who themed convention. And we missed it last year because it was right around the same time as, I think it was pretty close in time with a con. Also, I think it was Kansas City Comic Con and Time Eddy were very close together. And so I went and saw Colin Baker at Kansas City Comic Con last year, and then he was the guest of honor at Time Eddy. So it was like, oh, well, I kind of already spent my money there. So this year we decided, we were like, okay, we'd been hearing about it, and we haven't done an out-of-state con as far as being a vendor at a con. So we thought we'd give it a try. And we had a buddy, an artist buddy, James Hodge, who is also you can find him on Facebook and online as Straight Jacket Studios. And he's got a Facebook page and stuff that you guys can find for his work. He went down with us, and he had his own table right next to us. So we kind of split the room 3 ways, made it a little bit more affordable. But James is also a huge Doctor Who fan, and he even did a podcast for a while called Mad Fans with a Box.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And so whenever I get together with James, we talk Big Finish stuff, and it's always a good time. So we made the I don't remember what it is, 5.5 hour drive down to Wichita, and talked nerd things all the way there, and then then set up for the con. But this con was a little different in a lot of ways. One of the ways is that usually if there's Doctor Who people there, I'm going to spend money. And I don't normally spend money when I'm behind the table. That's kind of like the good thing of being behind the table. You get to see all the cool stuff, but you don't spend your money on it. Because you're there to make money. Well, right off the bat, it was a huge week trying to get things ready for it. Happened right at the end of the school year's quarter on the calendar. So I had to do report cards the day before.
Oh my God.
and we actually took the day off, which would have been the day that we would have worked on grades. So I had to get my grades done in advance. We had taken that day off, and then as soon as the school day ended on Thursday, we rendezvoused in Omaha and then left from there. So like Wednesday night, I'm packing my car and getting everything ready so that I can leave pretty much right after work Thursday. And I had it. I had everything laid out. I had lists and, probably the most organized I've been in a long time for a con because, first time out of state. We get there, I unload the car, but the problem is that I put pretty much everything in my back seat except for one bag. Oh, God. I put one bag in my trunk, and I thought, oh, this is an important bag. I wouldn't possibly forget it. It was the bag that had all of my clothes and my toiletries and all those like the main thing you'd take on a trip. Everything else is kind of just bonus, right? You need that one bag, that's the one bag you'd probably carry on a plane because you don't want to lose it. You want to make sure you have a change of clothes when you get wherever you're going. That one bag was in my trunk the whole weekend because I unloaded everything that I could visibly see. My brain had shut off. I'd gone into autopilot mode, and we take it out of the car, load it into the other car, take it out of the car, load it into the other car, look around, and I think I got everything. Like I look in the car, I look into the car, and I'm like, yeah, I think I got everything. The one place I couldn't look without opening it was the trunk, and I didn't. And so all my clothes and all that stuff was in there. So the con was quite unusual. We got down there, and I realized, have you guys seen a duffel? And it's odd because like last minute I basically like threw some lounge pants into just one of my other bags because it's like, I'm not gonna, it's just a last minute thing. I'll just grab it. So I had some like pajama pants for that first night, but otherwise I had no clothes for the next day. So the next day we're going to Walmart and I'm buying like this is where the story gets fun because I buy like some crazy ironic t-shirts because I'm like, man, these are just gonna be shirts. I just need cheap shirts because I'm probably not even gonna keep these shirts. I'll buy a pair of jeans. I just needed enough stuff to get me through the weekend, so it couldn't be like outlandishly great clothing. So I've got this tie-dye shirt that's all like impact font. Like the kind of font you see on like internet memes, but like the interior of the lettering is tie-dye and it says, "Let's get weird." And I thought, I kind of need to buy that shirt now. And so that was one of the shirts. And then I bought a Pac-Man shirt and a Mortal Kombat shirt. And the Mortal Kombat shirt was like really cheap. But it was like an extra size too large.
Oh, sure.
So it was like extra large or something. So those are the shirts I'm rocking all weekend. I think, it's all right. I'm at a con, whatever. But the thing is that I had booked at the con this year. There was lots of Doctor Who people, and one of the people that I had booked in advance a photo op with was Peter Davison. And so I'm gonna take a picture with Peter Davison in one of these horrible shirts. And I thought, well, if I'm gonna do it, I might as well just go full hog. So I'm wearing the "Let's Get Weird" shirt in my photo op with the Fifth Doctor.
Oh man,
pretty incredible.
You were saying he was a few tables down from your table?
Originally, we were all going to be basically in one room. But somebody drove. I didn't even get a chance to tell you this story. Somebody drove a car into like the side of the building or something, and so like the vendor's room, which should have been even bigger, had to be part of it had to be closed off, and they were working on it. And there was like construction on it and whatnot. So everybody that was going to be in that vendor room got pushed out into like I don't know what you'd call it. It's not like a lobby. But like,
oh, sure.
The big open area. I don't know what it would be called. So all the guests got put out there. I was going to be like 2 tables down from Peter Davison, and we were going to be like directly next to Dominic Lynn, which would have been pretty rad.
Oh man!
But so all those guys got pushed out into the other area. It would have been. I don't know if it would have been better or worse for business if those guys would have been in the vendor's room.
Oh, sure.
So
Wow.
yeah, so yeah, we had I don't know, I'll inevitably forget somebody, but we had a lot of really awesome classic, pretty much all classic era, with the exception of was it Caitlin, who plays young Pond, the young Amy Pond in the 11th Doctor stories. She was there, but otherwise it was pretty much all classic era. Like Peter Davison was pretty much the guest of honor. We had Terry Malloy, Davros was there. He had Anarchy Wills, who played Polly. So, we've got first Doctor, second Doctor alum right there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That was pretty awesome. Dominic Lynn was the composer for the Sixth Doctor theme. Would have been the Trial of the Time Lord.
Oh, sure.
Season of television. And then the voice of Omega from like the Three Doctors was there. I'm probably forgetting somebody, but the very first director of Doctor Who.
What? Really?
Yeah, he was there.
That's awesome.
And I hadn't even seen him. I thought maybe he had canceled because I hadn't seen him out there at the guest tables. But my friend James, he said, "Oh, he's out there." He was out there at least on Sunday. So I don't know if he was only able to make it for part of it, or he just was never out there when I was outside of the vendor room. But yeah, he was there too.
Man, that's awesome. Then the other thing I wanted to ask you about was the picture you had sent me from your room.
Oh.
No, I won't go.
I
won't go into other. We don't have to necessarily go into after hours stories, but
that'd be more fun. Those would be more fun stories. Waris Hussein was the original director of Doctor Who.
Oh, okay.
Because the name was kind of.
Man, that's awesome that he's doing cons and stuff. I wouldn't even have imagined.
Yeah, I wish I would have had a chance to just shake his hand. I mean, like that's pretty awesome. Okay, so which.
I can't remember what I was saying, but I had asked you something about.
Oh, it's on Twitter. On Twitter, you were like, "Are we jealous of Jesse? He's just getting to meet all sorts of Doctor Who people." And then I fired back with, "Yeah, I'm just chilling, watching this Peter Davison panel from my room."
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, we had a room which like they had like those balcony rooms, like sometimes if you're in a hotel, sometimes the balcony looks out over the pool or whatever. This one, for whatever reason, looked out over like their grand hall, like one of their main, like, I don't know, it'd be like a convention room kind of thing. And that even had a staircase that went right down into it. So I could have just like walked down and sat down at the thing, but I also could have watched it from my balcony. And we actually took full advantage of that later on in the evening. But yeah, Peter Davison just I had to go back up to the room for something, and I was like, oh, there's the whole panel. Like our blinds, our curtain wasn't even shut either, so like they could look up into our room too. So they might have seen, like some of the people in the audience might have seen me. Peter Davison wouldn't have, because he was like in front of me, but like everyone's looking that way, so like they could easily see me like up to shenanigans up in the room or something. Yeah, there's no small part of me that's like, what can I get away with here? I should have put some kind of Adric sign up in my window. The doctor lied and Adric died.
Oh man, that'd have been awesome.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. Just your proximity to everything was really cool. And then later on in the evening, Dominic Lynn had like a live like event or concert. I mean, he's basically down there playing his music and stuff. And so we just, we're just like, oh yeah, I'll just pop out here onto the balcony and hang out and listen to Dominic Lynn do his Doctor Who theme remixes. And so that was really awesome. And then he did a signing and sold CDs right then and there. And so we're like, hey, let's go pop down there. And so we did. We went down and said hi and all that. And that was a guest I wasn't sure if I was going to actually, meet or not that weekend. But it's like, this is too cool not to. And then Axton, being the like being the extrovert that he is, like he went back down later after the line had already died out and everything, and he just went down there and had a conversation with him. And I'm like, you don't even know who he is. But that's like the magic of Axton, is it doesn't matter. He can have a conversation with anyone. And but I was a little jealous of that, and so like the next time Axton was like, you know what, we're gonna go out, we're gonna go do something, and I was like, sold. I'm not even gonna think now. I'm just gonna follow you around because you just like have these incredible things happen. Yeah, which got into our after hours exploits, which I don't know that I should necessarily talk about, but would just say that they were mighty. they were mighty, and yeah, I don't know what to say without. I was barefoot. I'll say that I was barefoot, and there were adult beverages involved.
Awesome.
So stew on that, audience. Try to figure that one out. Kiefer didn't have shoes. What?
You were sending me some great pictures, and I wasn't even aware Time Eddy was happening that weekend. I think until you had mentioned like you were there or something, or I was like, oh, Jesse's off meeting more doctors.
Like that, yeah, like this. Oh, it's another Tuesday for Kiefer.
Oh, what's this? A picture of him with another classic doctor. Oh, okay.
I do have a picture with 5 through 7 now.
That is awesome, man.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. That's basically now it's like 8. 8 is one that I would really like to, because otherwise 4, Tom Baker's not going to be able to make it to America.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't see that happening. So, but I would really like to meet 8. I don't imagine I'll ever see 9, and 10 through 12 are really expensive right now.
Oh, yeah. Wait till they're more like classic doctors.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think David Tennant will ever be just a classic doctor. I mean, like,
yeah,
he's always going to be just a hard one to get to. I think he's like the Stanley of the Doctor Who world right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, totally. And he's done well at having a career outside of Doctor Who since Doctor Who.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is he's not just the 10th Doctor. He's also Kilgrave. He's also, he's in the Harry Potter universe. He's Broadchurch was brilliant. I mean, and he's he does Shakespeare on the regular. So yeah, I'm not talking down about him at all. He is worth every penny, I'm sure.
I think since 9, with the exception of Eccleston, all the new doctors really seem to embrace it, but he really seems to have embraced it the whole time. He seems to enjoy it. And the fact
his father-in-law, that doesn't hurt. Oh, speaking of which, I should probably mention the book. I enjoyed meeting Peter Davison. He was very nice. He was very polite. And I got to see him first thing Friday, basically. So I'm like, oh, I could have him sign a ton of things. I could have him sign a DVD. I could have him sign something from Big Finish, which is something that I'd had people sign in the past. And I just thought, you know what? He's selling his book. I think I'm going to go ahead and spring for the book. Well, on his book, he's leaning, like he's got his hand on his chin kind of thing, like that bored look or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't know if bored is the right adjective or not, but he was doing that. He was literally doing that as I walked up to the table to talk to his handlers and get the book and have him sign it. And I didn't realize it until just a couple of days ago. And that's why I messaged you. I was like, that's so meta. He was doing that. I sent you a picture of the book cover. I was like, wait a minute. He was doing that.
And what was the name of the book is
There Life Outside the Box?
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was a good story too, man.
And an actor despairs. And your comment was great. It was you were like, I feel like he's the doctor that would do that on purpose just to see if people could figure it out. That's what he's self-referencing.
It kind of seems, it seems like it falls in line with kind of his humor, and, that he would intentionally kind of.
To be self-referential like that. That is his kind of meta humor a little bit. It was a great con. The people at Time Eddy were fantastic. I think that was the best part of it, was like all the people we met. It wasn't a big money maker for me. Axton did a lot better. I think he was better prepared for this. Of course, me also having to buy a new set of clothing didn't help. But
yeah.
I would do it again just because it was so much fun. So I highly recommend that con. Sort of a mini con review.
It seems, sometimes you guys will do cons and you're kind of bound to the table.
Yeah.
But you come out with some pretty good stories this time around.
Well, I think being able to like get a room and stay at the con was, we were ripe to have adventures in this kind of a situation. Whereas normally if we're doing local cons, we just do the day, come home, do it again the next day. So it's a little bit more like a job. This felt a little bit more like a vacation, I guess. And
sure.
Boy, we took advantage of it.
All right. Let's see. The other thing is, so usually we do shout outs for new shows on the network. And I think in the future, I kind of want to tighten that up a little bit just so it doesn't take up so much time.
Right.
And so, I was mentioning to you beforehand that, maybe we can kind of cut the network shout outs just to kind of trim time back a little bit. But then we get shows where it's like, well, we have to shout these guys out. It's perfectly in line with, with our show. So since the last episode of Grawlix podcast, we've had 3 more podcasts join the Electronic Media Collective, podcast network. So I want to mention them real quick. The first it's 2 shows. It's the same guys, and they put it out through the same feed, but, they separate it by topic a little bit like we do, like Knights and the Bites and stuff like that.
Right. Or like Fat Boy and Captain Llama do with their
blown cartridges.
Yeah. Which, speaking of, before we get too far out of the way, their last episode of Blown Cartridges features a certain Grawlix producer.
Yeah. I sent in an audio recording, and it was cool. They listened to it and reacted to it. Just talking about not comic books, just talking about video game stuff. And specifically, I was talking about Red Dead Redemption because they had mentioned it a couple episodes back on their Blown Cartridges show, and speculating about, how a sequel will probably be announced soon.
Weird. I wonder if a sequel will ever be announced.
Spoilers. There's been a sequel announced.
What? So weird.
I'm glad because I had sent it in to them almost, I want to say about a month beforehand, and they didn't get it into their next episode, the following episode, but they got it into this most recent one, and I'm glad because it falls just before the Red Dead 2 announcement dropped. So I was like, all right, at least I squeezed it in there, last minute. So I could still say like, I called it, not that it was anything, not that it was something surprising. Everybody's been expecting it, but.
Right.
Also, Red Dead 2, man, I'm so excited.
Right.
Or Red Dead Redemption 2, which is technically like the 3rd Red Dead game, but whatever. Whatever. But the shows that have joined the network, we got Splurch and Parlipod, which is, the same guys host both. Splurch, they talk about more general comic book stuff, and Parlipod, they talk about Swamp Thing, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And I've been following them for a little while. And they approached me and I was super excited because I was like, oh, yeah, of course. Like, I've been listening to you guys since you guys started. So
there you go. Splurch is a great name too.
Oh, right.
I feel like we're kind of the sound that goes over a bad word, a Grawlix's, and they are a onomatopoeia. Fun.
Yeah, exactly.
We're like cousins, and they talk about Swamp Thing. Yeah.
Oh man. They're touting, and they're probably right, but Parlipod, they're like the world's only Swamp Thing podcast, dedicated Swamp Thing.
Easily could be.
Yeah, be. Which is great. So obviously, I had to shout them out because, man, Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
The other show that joined after them, well, there's been 2 other shows that joined after them. The next show was Gallifrey Stands, which is, as you might imagine.
I can't imagine I don't know what that's about.
It's about Teletubbies.
Is it weird?
No.
That's weird. Is Gallifrey a thing that they do? That Teletubbies do? Gallifrey is the name of one of the Teletubbies?
Yep. And he stands. That's bad. That's a bad joke. I'm sorry. I apologize to everyone who heard it. Bad. No, obviously it's a Doctor Who podcast. Man, and it's a great show. And I had heard of the shows several times, but it's one of those I just haven't checked out. And the first episode I listened, I checked out just a kind of random recent episode, and I listened to it, and it opened with Capaldi, legit Capaldi, introducing the show. And I was like, what? Done deal. You guys are on. Man. And I listened to the show, and yeah, it's really good. Hosted by Dr. Squee.
Dr. Squee.
Dr. Squee?
Huh.
And it's a fantastic show. They do, obviously, as you would expect, just kind of discuss general Doctor Who stuff, but also, like, it's really good about, like, they cover all the Doctor Who news. So it's a good way to keep up on all that. The class stuff, they're talking about the class, news and the new episodes of that coming out, which Americans won't see till next year for some reason.
Boo.
Yep. And fantastic show. So shout out to them. And then also the Cession podcast, which is more of they kind of describe themselves as like a music and pop culture podcast, but what really attracted me to Cession podcast is it's more like a couple dudes just talking about stuff. They'll talk about political stuff and news stuff, and they'll talk about music and stuff. And so that's a really fantastic show that is worth checking out as well. It's a little bit more general, but that's kind of what I like too. We've got a lot of the niche stuff. It's nice to have just dudes talking about the world and talking about life. Very cool. Yeah, it's like kind of like a Smodcast kind of approach. Yeah, like they have certain things they tend to hit on, but it's not a specific topic. And those are the new shows. 3 almost 4. 3 almost 4. Yeah, I mean I put Splurch and Parlipod in as 2 separate shows, so yeah, so I mean 4 different shows you can check out on the network. And I'm sure there's probably shows that have asked me and I've forgotten about, so I apologize to those shows, but one real quick big thank you to Dustin Smothers over at the Pro Wrestling Iowa podcast, who gave you a very complimentary shout out on their last episode. Did they? Yeah. I didn't even hear it. I'm going to have to listen to it. Sadly, I found there are certain shows on the network that, I mean, I've mentioned it before, that I don't listen to often just because, like, it's, something I'm just, the wrestling stuff, it's all over my head. I just not up on it. But the network is definitely getting to the point where, I mean, I've listened to all the shows on the network. I listen to every show before it joins. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely getting to the point where I'm falling behind on a bunch of shows. Where it's just like, sure, you can only keep up so much. Right. Well, thanks, Dustin. I will check out the shout out later. Much appreciated. Whatever you said, I'm sure it was great. I think you're swell. Not weird at all. No, this is not weird at all. We gotta get him on to talk about Stranger Things, or I know he liked Luke Cage quite a bit too. So that's what we should do. Yeah, we should do like a Luke Cage bites whenever. Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be fun.
Hey everybody, this is M.A. Tamburo from Doctor Who Dark Journey.
And this is Andrew Chalmers from Doctor Who Dark Journey.
We're both from Doctor Who Dark Journey.
Yes.
I said that we're from Doctor Who Dark Journey. You didn't need to say that we're both from Doctor Who Dark Journey.
But sometimes I totally forget what I'm saying.
Yes, but you're the writer. You're supposed to remember. I'm just the director. That's why I just tell you what you're supposed to remember.
But I write it down because I forget it.
Hang on. It's written down. I should have. I'm sorry.
You should see what I mean? There's a method in my...
There is a method to your...
madness,
yes. What I want to do right now is invite everyone to listen to our good friend Dr. Squee on the Gallifrey Stands podcast.
Yes.
Another proud member of the EMC Podcast Network, which we are members of as well.
I heard the rumors.
Yes.
This is fantastic.
The rumors are true. Death at Christmas is coming.
Prepare yourself
for the Gallifrey Stands special audio drama special. Special audio drama special?
It's very special.
Death at Christmas.
Death at Christmas. Great for all the grands out there. Nothing like death at Christmas.
No, you want the death at Christmas.
You do. Well, no,
Yeah.
I want a mince pie.
You want a mince pie? at
Yeah, I
Christmas?
don't want death at Christmas.
What's a mince pie?
Mince pie is a little, it's like sugar on them, and it's like,
No, I don't-
they're nice. They're really
No,
nice.
I don't-
They kind of taste like alcohol, but they're not.
Okay.
Anything's preferable to death at Christmas, if we're being honest.
Unless it's the Gallifrey Stands audio drama
Unless
special,
it's
featuring Dr.
this.
Squee
Dr. Squee,
his
as the Doctor,
team
and
of
Orla,
talents, and Orla as his faithful companion.
a real-life nurse, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But still, aside from that, no one wants death at Christmas.
Unless it's the audio drama.
Unless
special.
it's the audio drama, which is good.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that, I don't want to be misquoted as saying that death is good
Yeah.
at Christmas.
Well, you can't be misquoted. You're saying it. And I've got on tape, so.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah,
true. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm like the Trump of AM audio media.
Yeah. Who may or may not be president by the time this comes out.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true. In
Yeah.
which case, people won't listen to this because we'll have been in a nuclear blast.
Yes.
Caused by his hair.
Thanks
There
for
you go.
listening, everybody. And
Yeah,
thanks for listening to the EMC Podcast Network.
Yes, exactly. And I write things down because I forget them. And merry mince pies to you all.
Mince pie.
They're nice. And they're not dead.
No.
No. No. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
There we go.
Okay, so we should move along to our pull list segment.
Oh, hey.
We already kind of introed what the pull list was, so we don't need to go over that again, but we should talk.
This is the part of the show where we find out what's coming up, right?
Yeah. What currently on our pull list has the most votes, which means what are we talking about? What are we reading this next month? What have people committed us to?
What have you put on our plate? Hopefully it's not Brussels sprouts.
What burden have you unloaded?
yeah.
Hopefully it's not
which we beg for every month.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We can't really complain. It's our doing, and we're always like, please vote for this.
Please. Yeah. So please do. We do love it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Even if we hit a book once in a while that we don't really care for, man, it's worth it. It's worth it.
Yeah. Well, because we always find something we like about it, even if we don't like the whole thing.
Listen, we can't talk about Batman every episode, even though we
Right.
probably could if we really wanted to.
We could make this a Batman show.
Yeah, but we shouldn't.
No, because there's a lot of great Batman shows out there.
It's the Batman Swamp Thing Doctor Who show.
Yeah. Probably not a huge surprise because I think this was in second place last month.
Mm-hmm.
This month it is in first place, isn't it? Scott Snyder's Wytches.
Yep.
Didn't he write that? Yeah, Image Comics Wytches with a Y.
Wytches with a Y. Yeah, this came out, maybe last year. It could have been the year before, but it's a miniseries, so we'll be able to cover the whole thing. It's only maybe six issues. Wytches by Scott Snyder, which I've read maybe 2 issues of, so a lot of this is going to be new to me.
I have not read it at all, but I am still excited because this was actually part of a Image Comics Humble Bundle.
Ooh, so you already got it.
Yeah, I have it. I can, it's easy. And it makes me feel good about how I'm not good at managing my money.
See, instead of like what do they call it? Like impromptu, instead of wasting your money, it was an investment for now.
Yeah, who knew?
Paying off
who knew?
now.
I did.
Paying off in dividends.
So someday I'd need it. And I did. Just reinforcing my bad idea behavior.
I could be wrong, but I think we might have hard floppies of this. Seems like something I would buy when it was coming out.
Physical media.
What's media,
that?
Right? I'll dig through my boxes to find the floppies and be like, all right, yep, I got them. I'm gonna go read them on the computer now.
yeah. Put them right back into the long box.
Man, this book looks nice. Computer screen's big and bright.
Yeah. Well, that's like the photo ops that I got at the con. It's like, oh, these are great. Could I get a JPEG instead?
Yeah, no doubt, right?
Like I got to carry this thing around all weekend now. Thanks.
You just
for my timeless memory.
Just scan this for me, or just I need a straight picture.
Right. You have my email now. Just send it to my email.
Editor's note. A couple days after we recorded this episode, Jesse did in fact get sent to him via email digital copies of photos from that photo shoot. It really happened, true believers. Back to the show. So that'll be next episode. But this episode, we're talking about something a little bit different.
Which again is oddly timely.
I know, right? Not in
a good way.
Uh-uh.
No, not in a good way, like in a sad way.
Yeah, I was surprised when I heard this bit of news. So we're going to be talking about Preacher Volume 1, and then obviously if you're a comic book follower, you already know this, but just this, I mean, when this episode will have gone up, just this last month, the artist and co-creator of Preacher,
Steve Dillon
passed away, and he wasn't very old, which is a big bummer. But yeah, October 22nd. Of complications of a ruptured appendix. Yeah, that was a bummer, and I was like, "Oh man, really? Like, ugh. That's not the good kind of like." Sometimes a news story will come up when we happen to be reading something like, "Oh, nice, like synergy," but that's not the good kind of synergy at all.
No, we didn't. Yeah, we didn't know when we got this on the poll list that this would be occurring, but
yeah.
So there's a little bit of a dark cloud hanging over it, but like. We still get to celebrate and enjoy this incredible piece of literature that these gentlemen came up with. So,
So Preacher was published by Vertigo, written by Garth Ennis, art by Steve Dillon, painted covers by Glenn Fabry, and it was the series originally ran for 75 issues, 66 regular monthly issues, and 5 one-shot specials, and apparently a 4-issue limited series as well. From, did I say what year? It ran from 95 to 2000. What we read, we kind of, I regretted this a little bit later on, but basically the original trade paperback of this covers issues 1 through 7. Preacher Gone to Texas. Now what you're likely to get a hold of now, if you buy, the hardcover trade paperback is Preacher Book 1, which actually covers issues 1 through 12. We opted for the shorter one because we weren't sure what else we were going to be reading, and it's kind of a busy month. But after having read this 1 through 7, I kind of regretted not opting for the longer one, just so that you, Jesse, could read the next bit of arc coming up, because I was somewhat familiar with this. So we'll be talking about Preacher Gone to Texas, or issues 1 through 7, and then also. We will actually have Melanie here as we're all in different places. She'll
Location A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Mobile unit. Grawlix mobile unit.
She'll be, so I'm going to get a hold of her. She'll be on her phone, so she'll be calling in the Grawlix mobile unit.
A roving reporter, our woman on the street.
This will be very interesting. Plus, she's not on Wi-Fi, so I'm curious as to what kind of connection she's going to get. Hello.
Hi.
Hey, it's Melanie.
It's Melanie with the Grawlix mobile unit.
We got all the units today.
So, what are you talking about?
We just introduced Preacher, or did our little introduction on Preacher. And we are to the point where I would normally say, all right, guys, so what was your impressions of this going into it? What did you know about this going into it?
Well, I've already read the whole thing, the whole series. So I think it's great.
I knew that I would probably like it, but it's been on my list of shame for a while. So I'm glad that we're doing it, but I had not a lot of information about it in advance.
I was excited when this come up on the list because I was excited for Jesse because from the little bit when we kind of mentioned the Preacher TV show, it sounded like you knew like nothing of Preacher.
Well, and I think I added it to the list on this show.
Okay.
I think that was the thing. I was like, all right, that's it. I'm adding it to the list now. And then it shot up through the list like once it was on there.
So I was excited because he was coming to it new. I have not read the whole series, but I have previously read, like I was mentioning in the little intro here, I think I've read approximately book 1, like maybe 12 issues.
Okay.
So I've read a little bit beyond what we've talked about before, but I did reread issues 1 through 7 to talk about today, and I'm glad I did because I had forgotten everything. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and we don't have to talk too much about the TV show because I know Jesse still hasn't seen the TV show, but I'm glad I reread this after having watched the TV show. It was very interesting.
I didn't reread it yet, but still.
She had to, yeah. That's all right. We got the mobile unit. You're covering like you're like at the chopper view. You've seen it all.
How's the traffic? How's the traffic out there?
It's moving pretty smoothly, guys.
That's good. That's good. So your morning commute should be all right.
Here's kind of some plot points. According to Wikipedia, it tells the story of Jesse Custer, a preacher in the small Texas town of Annville, which it just struck me that that's Annville.
What? It just struck you?
Hey, yo.
Uh-huh.
Custer is accidentally possessed by a supernatural creature named Genesis. Basically, it gives him the word. It gives him the power to tell people to do a thing, and they have to do this thing, no matter what it is. Tulip and Cassidy are the other characters. It's kind of the trio of characters there. Tulip and Jesse were previously a thing, and Cassidy is a crazy vampire. So,
yeah.
Crazy fun vampire, baby.
He is a fun vampire. He seems kind of like he looks like an 80s punk.
Is he Irish? I mean, like, I get the idea that he's Irish,
yes.
but I don't know.
Yeah.
But
He's Irish.
Okay, because they call him, like, mean racial epithets.
Yeah. Oh, there are some of those.
By the way, this is choice language, ladies and gentlemen, for our Grawlix sensitive listeners. This is not something you would read to your kids before bed.
This is
unless you want your kids to just be like crazy
fun vampires.
So Garth Ennis is the writer, and he's known. I mean, one of the things he's known for is his colorful language in the titles that he writes, that he can get away with it. And one thing I had forgotten about this book is, when it was announced they were going to do the TV show, people were like, "Oh, but the language, there's so many F-bombs." One thing I had forgotten about this book is it's not so much the F-bombs, it's how language is used. And then there's also some real extreme slurs and stuff used throughout the dialogue.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, you generally don't have characters that you're supposed to be on board with saying these things. It's usually bad, I mean, it's the kind of story where you've got a spectrum. It's not necessarily good and evil, but it's definitely bad dudes that are usually using this language.
But Jesse Custer is no saint himself. Either.
No, definitely not. But the way that the language is used, sometimes it's used for comedy, which almost makes it a little bit more like, ooh.
One of the things that I really remember, I don't know what other book it was that we read, but I remember discovered that that person had also written this, and I like the way he writes women. I think I might have said it then too.
Oh,
but they're like actual people and not,
I could be wrong, but I think it was Punisher Max.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, and Punisher Max had strong female characters, or at least a strong female character that I think Melanie had commented on. Well,
because in a lot of things, women seem very blah. Like I don't know. They don't seem like real people. They seem like, just something they slapped in there because it's pretty. Not like it doesn't have. They don't have actual personality.
Mm-hmm.
Some things you do, like even like whiny, crappy women from like Walking Dead have personality, but they're not always very fun, huh?
I know what you're saying though, because some other writers they're either they fall into the trope of like women are, like you said, they're whiny, or there's a lot of like, the dependence. They're very dependent on male characters, or they're there to serve male characters as opposed to other women characters that are written better. They're more, I don't want to say they're more independent, but you know what I mean? They're not there to serve the plot or the other characters. They're there as a fully flushed out character.
Yeah, and even the women that are strong characters are easily offended all the time in a lot of things.
And I mean, between the three hosts, between us three here, I think if somebody were to suddenly bust in and start saying some outrageous stuff, Melanie might be the least offended of the three of us. So
yeah, probably.
I'd be most likely to bust out with some offensive stuff.
She'd be the one that would be saying the things.
Yeah.
In fact, it's happened. I'm pretty sure. Oh, it might have been a different podcast, but I remember you bleeping 20 minutes of me or something, or just cutting it out maybe.
Yeah, there was an old.
Not offend Superman followers.
Yeah, there was an old thing where I had to cut a whole bit you went on about a whole tirade about Superman, and this was an uncensored podcast to begin with, and I still had to cut it. So,
yeah.
Oh wow.
Tulip is interesting in this book, and I think her character, and maybe Jesse can speak to this, because I think her character, as somebody who's read a little past this, or in the case of Melanie, who's read more of Preacher, I think her character gets stronger a little further into the series.
Well, I like how they're kind of even in this first 7 issues, they're playing with the idea that Jesse is kind of our narrator, but not really. We get to see his inner monologue, it's still that era of comics where we are reading what they think from time to time. And he kind of makes it sound like, well, I'll get her in bed within a week or so, or something like that. And she just keeps throwing that back in his face. I'd rather be with Cassidy right now.
Yeah. And, and she knows that's what he's thinking, even before he starts in on it again. I like the interplay between the three characters, the three main characters we follow. I really like the friendship between Jesse Custer and Cassidy.
Mm-hmm.
And in the TV show, they play it well, as there's kind of a similar dynamic. It plays well, but I think it's more entertaining here. I really like it here. And then just the dialogue, the dynamic between the characters is they're kind of crappy to each other, but it's in that friendly way.
Mm-hmm.
So there's truth in how the characters are how that kind of friendship is portrayed, which is fun to read.
Yeah, it's fun to be around too. You get to laugh at people when they're mean to each other, but it's supposed to be not mean because it's funny.
Here's what happens. Basically, in these first 7 issues, you've got 2 mini arcs. You've got the first one that kind of introduces the characters, one thing I had forgot is how much straight up on Front Street the comic is about, here's what Genesis is, here's where it came from. I want to say the 3rd page of the comic is you're in heaven or wherever that place is.
Yeah.
It doesn't hide it at all. The TV,
which is a spaceship.
It is like a spaceship, huh?
Yeah.
It's very strange. There's various I guess races of angels.
Yeah, the warrior angels don't look particularly angelic either. They don't look like nice guys.
There's a word for it. The different somethings. It's I can't think of what it is.
Like the seraphim and the
Adelphi or something like that.
Yeah. Basically, this Genesis thing got loose, which they were supposed to keep under wraps. And it's super powerful. It got into Jesse, and they mentioned that it's merging with Jesse. And so basically the first arc is introducing all that. You get introduced to Tulip, to Cassidy, to Jesse Custer. Jesse gets this ability. You get introduced to, what's his name? Sheriff Root?
Yeah.
And he doesn't last too much longer, but you also get introduced to Arseface. I can't remember.
Was I right? Was he already Arseface, or did he become Arseface? Because I swear he wasn't, and then he became it because of.
No, he was already. He was already. Yeah.
He didn't know, but he still didn't even know what it meant. He's basically what's that mean, Dad? What does Arse mean?
Yeah, he actually adopts the title of Arseface.
Yeah, he calls himself it after that first arc.
And since we can say it's his name, even though it's kind of technically a swear.
There's an R in it. It doesn't count.
That's right. Yeah. That's not a swear word in America.
No.
Nope.
So we're gonna sometime we have to get into a discussion of the comic versus the TV show because it kind of fascinated me rereading this. We also get introduced to the Saint of Killers.
Mm-hmm.
It's so crazy. All this happens within the first few issues. For the most part, a lot of it happens in the first issue. The TV show, like, this is like doled out through the whole season, some of this stuff. But anyway, yeah, it's paced very differently. But so then the church that Jesse was the preacher at, when he gets the Genesis goes into him, or however you want to say it, it basically explodes the church, which had pretty much the whole town of people in it. So the church that he was covering in the town he's from, they're all dead. And a lot of this arc is them on the run from initially just the police, and then it becomes the police and the Saint of Killers guy, who's basically a resurrected, invincible killer. He's a cowboy who he's like he's not a demon, but he's like the ghost of a cowboy killer. He just murders people, and it's incredible. It's incredible. I'm not going to do it. Fall into the Trump.
No, it's incredible. Oh boy.
He's always winning at killing.
He has the best guns.
He has the best guns. Everyone's always telling him how he has the best guns.
Look, everyone says I have the best guns. They're incredible. They're wonderful guns. They never jam. We're going to kill all of the Saints. Wait, that's not how it works. But I didn't make a mistake there.
Wrong.
If I did, I would apologize.
Wrong.
But since I didn't, and I'm right.
Such a nasty co-host. Hey, he said it. At this point, we're quoting. This isn't even a political discussion. We're just quoting celebrities.
Celebrities a little far, don't you think?
No, that's the problem. That's all it should be.
Yeah.
We're certainly not quoting a politician.
That's true.
So that's the first arc. The second arc I had totally forgotten about is they go to New York City, and there's this plot line with a serial killer and
RoboCop.
RoboCop, yeah, basically I like how they describe, like, so we get introduced to the second arc through this character of a Detective Tool, and Sheriff Stool and Detective Tool, that's interesting. And he's the unluckiest cop in the world. But his partner is, as they put it, if they made a movie based on his partner, Arnold Schwarzenegger would play this cop. He's the hard edge. He's Charles Bronson, right? Like, he's just the hard edge cop who plays by his own rules, but he's like the superstar because he's tough and he solves the cases.
Yep.
God, this character. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
And Cassidy, they've gone to New York to meet up with, I guess an important plot point is God has left. God has left heaven or whatever, and Jesse finds this out, and so basically he's made his mission to find God because he's run off to Earth somewhere, and he's not taking care of heaven, and the angels are pretty much just have to deal with it, and Jesse has this power, so the power could rival that of the Lord, so he's like, well, I'm going to go find God and hold him accountable for running off. I mean, right? That's like...
Yeah.
Kind of becomes the mission statement of the book after the first arc anyway. So they went to...
So they go to the Big Apple.
Yeah, the Big Apple to meet up with this guy that Cassidy knows who's like he's a journalist, but he almost seems, he's not tabloid journalist really, but he's like a kind of a sleazy journalist guy who's really into conspiracy theories and weird occult reports, stuff like that. So Cassidy takes him there just to try to get a lead on something. So, I mean, that's the basic rundown of the story. What are your guys' thoughts on this stuff?
Again, and it's not just females. I just like the characters that he writes. They're all very interesting. They're fun. Even like the bad guys, they're fun. Even when you don't like them, you kind of like them because they're just great characters. They're just bad, you know?
Yeah, I feel like even with like that first sheriff, who's just like they make him, he writes him a comically over the top, despicable guy, if that makes sense. Like, he's ridiculously, like, he says very racist but weird racist things, And he seems fairly one note, but he puts enough layers under this guy where it's like, well, that's where his son is Arseface, and that's where that whole thing comes from. And even that character tends to be a little bit more on the one note side, but even him, there's a little bit to it, and he's entertaining because you're like, what is this guy gonna say, or what are they doing with this character? This guy's so over the top. And then, the main characters, it feels like everyone has their own voice, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though it's a messed up voice you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
It's still a voice.
Well, even in like the second arc where we get introduced to each of the cops, they're all their own thing, but they don't feel like cliches. They don't feel like, okay, this is the classic portrayal of a TV cop or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Like you might think that on the surface, but then you find out, whoa, okay, no, this is not necessarily what we think we're getting isn't necessarily the whole story.
Yeah, like even with RoboCop, like we'll call him RoboCop.
RoboCop.
He seemed. What's that? He seems.
Nothing. I'm just laughing at you.
Okay, he seems like he's like that '80s typical action, like super tough guy. But yeah, then there's like a weirdness to him, and shades like a weird. There's shades underneath that they eventually they peel these layers away, and you discover more about him, and you're just like, whoa, it's weird. It's weird. That guy's strange.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, when
And a lot of them do get strange, don't they?
Yeah, for sure.
And I guess you only read the beginning, so yeah.
Well, and I wished we'd opted for, like I said, the longer book one, because they hint at it partway through this. But that gets into a little bit of like, well, this book mentions something about Jesse's grandmother, is it?
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's kind of how it ends. It's like your grandmother called.
Yeah.
It's like, dun, 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 and that's where the issues that we read stop.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the next little kind of arc. Oh, my God. It's crazy. So I kind of wish we'd have read that, but it doesn't matter. It's not relevant to what we're discussing, I guess. But Melanie, you said you like it. Jesse, how did you feel about this? I'm kind of curious as to how this struck you coming to it for the first time. Like, so you're reading this colorful language with this crazy stuff happening. Like, how did you feel going through this book?
Well, okay, so it's interesting because I've been binge watching Supernatural, and it's funny because at a certain point in Supernatural, some of the things that are happening here are also happening there, which you know, it's like, oh wow. I mean, that's kind of the whole thing with Supernatural, is it's kind of a jigsaw puzzle of being derivative, you know, like it's got, you know, different, it just pulls all these different references, and like God being on vacation or God being missing in action. That whole idea is a thing that they touch on in that show. And so it's interesting because it's like, oh, well, that probably came from Preacher.
Yeah.
And so I think like it's interesting because then that's like this work has had a, you know, like that broader impact, and it makes me wonder, like, I'm sure this isn't the first time that that's been written about, but maybe it is, or at least maybe it's the most poignant work in pop culture where we get this idea of God is dead. Maybe he's just playing skee-ball. Yeah, or he could be playing skee-ball. He could be dogmatic about it.
Well, yeah.
I enjoyed it, and I think I would enjoy reading more of it. It really makes me think of like characters like John Constantine and like that kind of thing, where it's like he's a good guy, but he's not necessarily always a likable good guy.
Mm-hmm.
But he's got, I think his heart ultimately is kind of in the right place, even if he goes about it the wrong ways.
That's an aspect of his character I think the TV show's handled pretty well too. The artwork. What do you guys think of the artwork? Because when I think back on Preacher, I was like not fond of the artwork, but I think what I'm confusing in my head the look of this book with is the covers. And the covers, while well done, and what did it say? The cover artist was Glenn Fabry. While the covers are well done, they have like a painted look, but they're very grotesque, which is kind of that Vertigo look at the time.
Will Gallo from Fat Boy and Captain Llama also chimed in on the artwork on Twitter, because we always want to know what people think before we record, and he said that Dylan was far from his favorite artist, but there's something about his art in Preacher that's just so good. Sad to see him go. So he kind of chimed in on that bit.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because reading this again, I was like, oh, the art actually looks a lot better and a lot cleaner than I remember it being, because I think I was associating it with, the cover art, which has a certain look. But the actual art inside, I liked it a lot upon this read through.
It's not like it's realistic. I don't know. I don't know that I can say it's realistic, but it's not like your typical comic art where everyone looks like a supermodel. Like, these people look like real people.
And I think that's part of what's so good about it. And I only noticed one time where the faces, there was a random lady whose face looked very much like Tulip's, except it wasn't Tulip. But for the most part, everybody has such a distinct look. There's no issue with like mixing characters up, and they also have a detailed look. And Tulip specifically looks like a certain actress, and I can't place her. But
Meg Ryan.
Yeah, maybe.
No, I don't.
Not Meg Ryan.
Ryan. Meg Ryan's too cutesy.
There's somebody. She's got like a 70s, 80s face.
Maybe, what's her name? With short hair. When she has short hair. What's her name? They cut her head off and put it in a box in 7.
Oh, Gwyneth Paltrow. I guess I can see that too, but I don't know if it's her I was thinking. But anyway.
Charlize Theron.
Obviously, okay, so she's got the look of a couple people. But
my girl crush.
Charlize Theron?
Yeah, she's one of them.
Yeah, and
I like her lots.
What has she been doing lately? It doesn't matter. Sidetracking ourselves.
Yeah.
I like the look of the characters. At the same time as reading this, I was reading another book, which we'll talk about on a future episode, bouncing between this and another book. And the art in the other book wasn't bad, but it's like one of those books where a lot of, especially if it's not a quote unquote hero character, if it's not somebody who's like a main character, all the faces look the same. So it was nice to bounce, and maybe that's why this art appealed to me so much this read through. It was nice to bounce back to this where everyone looks distinct. I like the layouts and stuff. I mean, they're not like super stylized, striking layouts, but it flows well.
Yeah, I don't think the artwork is particularly beautiful or anything, but
I think it's solid.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not super fond of Tulip at this point. I like Jessie a lot. I like Cassidy a lot. I
don't really like Tulip either. I don't really like Cassidy all that much either. They're unlikable, but they're real. Right. I like it. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, I would agree with that too, but Cassidy's at least fun to read.
Fun.
And Tulip's not. She's more serious. There are some good moments between Tulip and Custer that, there's some lighthearted moments, or at least good little kind of emotional beats that they hit with those characters.
I would read more of it. I would recommend it.
You should read more of it. It's good.
I held off on rereading this because, like I said at the beginning, I'd read it before, at least what we were going to read. And then when I pulled it up to look at it, I was like, holy crap, I don't remember hardly any of this. And I found my reread was, man, it was a breeze. And I enjoyed it quite a bit. And I was like, why did I ever stop reading this? So I enjoyed it quite a bit, even this being my second time reading this particular stuff.
Oh yeah, easy read, yeah. I think once I got going, I finished it in 2-3 days. And that's just because I stopped a bunch of times.
Again, strong language and a lot of violence. Oh, that was another thing. And I know Garth Ennis didn't do the artwork for either of these things. He's the writer. But we talked about Punisher Max. And I remember there being lots of panels of dudes getting shot in the head where they're just missing part of their face or missing part of their head. That stuff happens a lot in Preacher.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
Just half a face gone, just constantly.
Either before we even met them or while it happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Well, I think they go into a bar and some guy just randomly doesn't have a nose.
Yeah, what was that? In one panel, he's got like a little metal cover over where his nose should be. That was weird.
And I don't even think it was a thing. I don't even know. Like they might have mentioned it just tangentially or just briefly, but then it's not even a thing. Just like this guy has no nose. And then later on we meet, the guy that tried to commit suicide and now he's Arseface, and yeah.
Yeah. And this is a detail that they didn't translate over to the television show because it would be out of date. But the reason for Arseface shooting himself tied into the whole, he was following his hero, Kurt Cobain.
You're right.
It tied into that whole thing. The TV show, they don't do that because Cobain's not really relevant now.
It's always relevant. What are you talking about?
Well, you know what I mean, though. You know what I mean. It's more of a stretch. I think it would seem weird at this point.
Following his hero, Panic at the Disco. Try to make it timely.
Did Panic at the Disco?
He had a Fallout Boy.
I could be wrong, and I know they did that Ghostbusters song, but I almost feel like at this point, calling Fallout Boy relevant shows your age.
Cool.
Just as much as calling Nirvana relevant.
Oh no.
I do want to say, reading this after having watched the television series, it's really interesting the way they handled the TV show, and I kind of appreciate it a bit more. For example, the way they introduced the Saint of Killers in the comic book is very kind of matter of fact. The way they do it in the TV series, I loved it. It's totally different. You actually instead of him just being this hardcore killer that they brought back from wherever he was resting, you get the story, a backstory to this guy put to you in a super interesting way that they actually seed through several episodes before giving you the final here's what this guy is. It just handles introduction of characters pretty well, with the exception of maybe Tulip in the TV show, that is. And Tulip in the TV show is a completely different character.
Yeah, she is. Very much
different. Huh. That's the one aspect where I think the TV show maybe the way that it introduces Tulip is fun, but almost too over the top, even by the comic book standards, if that makes sense. I think it'd be a good discussion in the future to talk a little bit about the comics versus the TV show. That could be another, a secondary segment sometime.
I think we should talk about, real quick, what are our plans? Or did you guys already discuss what our plans are from now on for the other section?
We haven't really talked about it on the show. I don't think we've hammered out specifics on what the new segment, what will become of the secondary segment, but I think that was kind of the point, is so that we could keep it a little bit more fluid or flexible.
So rather than continue with Invisibles, which we will visit that book, right?
Yeah, I mean,
sometimes.
But rather than do the whole run,
right?
We'll probably just hit the first one and then keep it fluid.
And I like doing the reoccurring segments, but this way we can
be current and not spend years on something that's already done.
Well, if there's something new that comes out that we want to check out, or that if it's or if we know there's a movie coming out and we plan on seeing that movie and we want to spend a chunk of time talking about that movie, or something like that, or something comes up last minute that we'd like to throw in, it'll give us more opportunity to do that. And also, maybe touch on more series, more trades, or smaller runs of stuff. I don't know. It just leaves us a little bit more open to not be tied to, a series for so long.
And I'm good with that.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. But we
already like good ones anyway.
But we do have to talk about Invisibles Volume 1 sometime, because I read it, and if I read it, we're talking about it.
I will. I'm sorry I'm such a slacker anymore.
Invisibles is an interesting read. I'll say that. Before, people complain about, without going into it, here's my mini Invisibles Volume 1 review, which we'll talk about in more detail on a future episode. People complain often about Grant Morrison stuff, and everything I've read of Grant Morrison I've enjoyed, but I'm okay, well, he's weird. I get where they're coming from, but people seem to really have a hate on him sometimes. Reading Invisibles, I'm like, oh, this is what they're talking about.
Uh-oh.
It didn't make me have a hate on Grant Morrison. I still like Grant Morrison's stuff a lot. And I think there's some interesting stuff in Invisibles, but it is challenging, I guess would be the word. It's challenging. It's interesting read. It's
Will I be deeply offended and yet find hope in it?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. But it's possible. Both things might be possible. Yes.
All right. As long as it's on the same level as the Quran.
I think Grant Morrison would be extremely happy if you thought it was. This is Randy from in the future, and I have a very important message for you. The Grawlix podcast is missing something, and that something is you. Join our letters page segment. If you have thoughts on what we're reading, what we just read, what we're about to read, what you're reading, or you just want to say hi, send us an email to letters@grawlixpodcast.com, and we'll read and discuss your letter on the show. What the devil? What are you doing here? Hey folks, this is Randy from further in the future. And what my former self neglected to mention is we also have a Google Voice line. You can call it, leave a message, and we will play that message on the next episode of the Grawlix podcast. Try to keep it under 2 minutes. Whatever you want to talk to us about it. Ideally, something related to the show. Dial 559-426-6427, or if this helps you remember, 559-4-COMICS. Type that into your phone, you'll be connected to our voicemail, leave us a message, and we will play it on the show. This is getting ridiculous. Get out of my way. Get out of my way. This is Randy from even further in the future. And what these two knuckleheads neglected to mention is if you'd rather send us an MP3 recording of yourself to play on the show, you can hit that email. Again, that's letters@grawlixpodcast.com with an MP3 attachment, and we'll play it during the show. Just try to keep your language clean and keep it under 2 minutes. Also, hey Bonehead, did you just shoot our younger self? Yeah, it's cool. Shouldn't we be doing the Marty McFly disappear from the picture act right now? No, it's fine. He was a time remnant. Oh, that doesn't make sense. A time remnant doesn't make sense. At some point, older Randy has to travel back to talk to younger Randy. But if older Randy kills younger Randy never gets to become older Randy and travel back in time. It's time travel, not cloning. We're not cloning and sending ourselves back. We're just time traveling. You don't know that. We could be operating on primer rules. In that case, there can only be one. All right, so I figured we'd just talk a little bit about TV things, because since the last episode of Grawlix, just all of it, all the TV.
Yeah, fall is fallen.
You know, last episode we were like, oh, I can't wait for all the shows, man. There's nothing on. We've been, slowly making our way through Boardwalk Empire. Can't wait for this. Like a week into like all the shows starting, I was like, there's too many shows.
Can't keep up with all the shows.
And in fact, like I can't, we're like an episode behind on Flat, all the CW stuff at least. And we haven't all watched Luke Cage, like there's a lot of stuff going on, but
have you guys started Supergirl or even approached Supergirl? 'Cause I haven't.
No. Not at all. No. I had intended to, but it wasn't super high on my priority. And once all the shows got into full swing, I was like, oh yeah, I definitely need to make a priority list here.
Right. And I kind of wanted to, because they have a new Superman over there, and I'm hearing good things about him. But I'm just like, I got to draw the line somewhere. Right now, it's at Supergirl.
They got a new Superman over there.
They've got a Superman, and it's not Henry Cavill. I'm pretty much on board.
The things that, at least for me, the things that have really grabbed me have been Luke Cage, Westworld, man, loving Westworld, and we're behind on Flash, but of course Flash has been pretty good. Those are like the three that I can think of that I've been making a point to hit. Oh, and obviously we had the Walking Dead premiere.
Yeah.
Obviously.
So let's talk for a moment. Jesse, you've seen that, right? Yeah, of course you have.
Yeah. Yep.
Let's talk for a moment about the Walking Dead season premiere, even though by the time this episode goes out, there will be a couple more episodes out, but it's a pretty big deal, right?
Yeah, a little bit. It's kind of like the whole shift of the story. It's a shift. It's going to be a shift for the show, and it was a shift for the comic books.
Yeah. Spoiler warning. Spoiler. As if people don't know by now. So how do you feel about, because, and this has kind of happened before, but at least this time, in terms of the TV series, at least this time, I kind of see where people are coming from, but you got a lot of people done with the show, done with Walking Dead. They crossed the line. Where do you fall in that whole spectrum of emotion?
No way. I mean, like, we knew this was coming.
Yeah.
I mean, like, what do you mean they crossed the line? What about this crossed the line? They were showing us Polaroids of what was going to happen all of last season. Like, they were building up to Negan and the terrible stuff he does for a full season.
I'm glad you put it that way, because that's kind of the way I feel about it. And it's like the cliffhanger, the thing that they used to hook us, the thing that everyone who's watching the show has been so anxiously awaiting to find out is who's going to get beat to death with a baseball bat. That's literally the cliffhanger. So when the show comes back and they deliver on that, people are upset. And it's like, you were waiting to see who was going to get beat to death with a baseball bat. What did you expect was going to happen?
Right.
People are going to get...
expect to see eyeball popping out, I'll tell you that.
Well, and... You're right.
No, that was intense. Yeah.
You're right. And listen, it was unpleasant. It was not an enjoyable episode at all. It was terrible, terrible time. But that's not to say it was bad. And there are people I've read even in my friends list on Facebook who are like, they're done with the show and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, you could have achieved the same thing if if he'd swung the bat at somebody and then you cut to black. It's the same thing. It's like, no. Like, you're wanting kid gloves. That's not the same thing. And
especially not because they already faked it once. You have to see it or you won't believe it.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think that's part of what really I think the way they did it is the way they almost had to do it. And people are upset, well, it's manipulating the audience. And I 100% agree. It is manipulating the audience. And that's part of what makes it so interesting to me, is because they did do the fake out with Glenn. So they couldn't, anything short of showing his skull cracked open with his eyeball hanging out, you're going to have people doubting it because they've already set up that possibility. So they had to go full bore and deliver, like, you have to watch this or else, there's no coming back.
Yeah.
I also think, and it's kind of crappy, but I think Abraham, killing him as well is a temporary misdirect. And it's manipulative in that they know the audience isn't that attached to Abraham. He's not he's not a dislikable character, but he hasn't been in it since the beginning. And it's, come on, it's Abraham, right?
And he would have, and basically they've cleaned house on the people that were supposed to die anyways.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. And as Melanie said, like right after he started going to town on Abraham, she's like, you're right. You can never be happy in Walking Dead, because that's how they ended his last season, is like they were giving him an obvious arc of like, he's finally like feeling good or feeling, a little bit better with his place in things. You can't do that in Walking Dead, man. It's a death warrant.
So just be miserable all the time and you'll live forever.
Possibly, yeah.
Unless you're K-Dog.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be black.
Yeah,
that's
too.
Because those guys don't last too long on the show either.
No.
That's not me. That's the show, okay? All that being said, man, they really did go super hardcore and made a point to make you feel bad about the way Glenn went out.
Yeah.
And then the bit with the whole breaking Rick and the bit with Carl's arm.
Yeah.
Holy crap. So
that I didn't see that coming. I thought they were really setting things up for Rick to lose his arm or his hand.
Uh-huh.
And then they just totally spun it. And I was like, whoa.
That's part of the way it manipulates you. And if you're not reading the comic, if you haven't read any of the comics, it wouldn't necessarily work on you at this level. But a comics reader, as we discovered during our Walking Dead segments, Rick has lost his hand in the comics. So as a comics reader, you're like, wait, are they going to make good on that now? Like,
Yeah,
it's
they keep
just
teasing it. Yeah.
Yeah. At that point in the show, because normally you'd be like, there's no way they're going to take Carl's arm. But in that point in that episode, I think the brutality, the whole Glenn thing, I think just the whole, and the tenseness of the episode, I think at that point, like at least I was seriously like, they might do this. Like at this point, they're going all out and you don't know what is going to happen.
Yeah.
They already had him okay, which, good for them for doing it. But they can't make you lose your eye and then chop your hand off too when they haven't done anything to Rick yet. Come on.
I didn't see it happening, but at that point, like I said, the episode had been so tense and so extreme that I was like, they might. I don't even know anymore.
Yeah, I guess. I would have been unhappy if they would have cut off his arm. If Rick would have cut off his, that would have been fine. Don't do it to the kid who already had his eyeball. Come on.
In general, I think people's reaction, there's a lot of people that are being, as you would expect, I mean, it's not network television, but we're not talking HBO. I understand people are upset. And to a point, I want to be like, calm down. It's Walking Dead. You should expect it to be kind of brutal. But one of the most like sadistic, like displays of just straight, sadistic evil behavior in a show that I've ever seen.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think that they can ever do anything in terms of language that would ever be worse than what we witnessed visually.
Well, and that's another thing that plays into the cliffhanger the season before. Was it the season before? Maybe it was 2 seasons ago. The whole thing where they debated on having Rick drop the F-bomb instead of saying they're screwing with the wrong people, and they opted to go with that instead of the F-bomb. The fact that that was actually a debate they had. And then you get to this season premiere and you witness that kind of brutality to a character that you're invested in. It's so funny because it's like, well, you're not going to see any nudity. They can't drop the F-bomb, but they can bash Glenn's eyeball out. Like,
right.
It is kind of ridiculous.
Which has had way more emotional impact on a person than that word,
Yeah. So bizarre where our priorities are in terms of censorship.
Yeah. And that's, yeah, exactly. And that's not a Walking Dead thing. That's just it seems like an American thing. I'm sure other countries have other elements of that, but it's definitely a weird American thing. Now, does it being Glenn, I mean, obviously that's going to have a different effect on somebody than random stranger. But I remember being somewhat shocked at episodes in the past where they've very graphically cut characters' throats, but they're characters that we don't know, or they're, whatever, B characters.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you think people would be as outraged if it was basically like the Glenn thing, but some other random character, somebody we don't really care about?
If they had switched around Abraham and Glenn and what they did to them? Because, I mean, they showed Glenn not Glenn, Abraham with some blood running on his head, but that's not nearly as bad.
Yeah, the Abraham thing was graphic, but it was, anytime it was real graphic, it was shot further back, and a lot of the swings were off camera.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think it would have been as big of a deal if it had been I don't think if people would have reacted the way they did, perhaps, if it had been Abraham that they showed getting his eyeball popped out and not Glenn.
And I think honestly, I think the whole reason Abraham went was to basically throw the scent off of Glenn. Glenn's who gets it in the comics. They probably are that's who people are going to expect. So let's throw Abraham out there. And that takes that, that adds back the surprise of Glenn getting it.
And just in case you weren't freaked out, now we're going to throw Daryl in a van.
Yeah.
And that's kind of and I had this thought, that's kind of them listen, we know we couldn't kill Daryl if we wanted to at this point. They're we don't want everyone to leave, but we got to do something. So we're taking him away.
Yeah. Because Daryl would fight back one way or the other.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. And it also played into somebody else has got to go. Time for Glenn.
Yeah.
Again, it was not a fun episode. It was very hard to watch. It was super tense. I'm surprised they had the gall to do it. They had to know people were going to get upset.
Yeah, it's a leap of faith.
Yeah, for sure. But, AMC is it's smart of them to make those ballsy decisions to be okay, well, this is extreme, but okay. Because if they weren't willing to do that, they wouldn't have had their Breaking Bads. They wouldn't have had Walking Dead in the first place with how extreme it's been in the past. They wouldn't have Preacher. So I think them taking those chances, willing to possibly alienate or offend viewers, I think for the most part it's worked out for them.
Well, we haven't had a major death like this in The Walking Dead since, like, Herschel.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's another thing. Like, they kind of needed that because you could sense that. The last couple seasons, we haven't. You're right.
It's like, we're going to have a death, but it's going to be one of these other guys.
It had to be somebody big, because even Herschel he'd been there for a little while, but not anything like as long as Glenn has. Glenn's been there since the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we had Tyrese, but Tyrese also was kind of like the Abraham impact. It's like, okay, we've had him for a while, but not long enough to get attached.
He's still kind of, everybody else is like second stringers, you know.
Yeah.
There's a couple characters.
I was really sad when Dr. Girl died. That made me sad.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And she basically got the Abraham death.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What's her name? Denise? Was it Denise?
Yeah. I think so.
I did not know that.
Yeah, you do.
Oh, also, as terrible as it is, I enjoyed Negan's line about it's a vampire bat.
I'm loving Negan. I mean, I love everything about Negan, really, and I probably shouldn't because he's horrible. I shouldn't love him, but like Jeffrey Dean Morgan is playing it so well,
and that's part of what makes the character all the more interesting because you hate him, you hate him, but he's so charismatic.
He's so perfect for this role. I can't see anybody else in the role right now.
Do you guys want to call it good there? Or did you want to talk, like, both of you guys? I finished Luke Cage, but neither of you guys have. Did you guys want to say anything about that at all, or should we just call it good?
I would say save it until I'd like to get a little further, especially since there's things that you said are going to happen pretty soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to see what happens.
I'd like to get a couple episodes further because it is kind of a weird place that I'm at right now.
I'm good with that. I'm on my second viewing of the series, so it's all just reinforcing it so I can remember it for later discussions. So I'm good with that.
Oh, sure.
This is Melanie, and that boy's got the Grawlix in him.
This is Jesse. There are 3 rules. 1, no bright light. 2, don't get him wet. And 3, never feed him after Grawlix.
This is Randy. We all go a little Grawlix sometimes. Thank you for listening to the Grawlix Podcast. The Grawlix Podcast is a production of the Electronic Media Collective and Vorpal Arrow Studios. For more Grawlix Podcasts, check out GrawlixPodcast.com. Also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, YouTube, electronicmediacollective.com, Facebook.com/Grawlix Podcast, Twitter.com/Grawlix Podcast, all the .com/all the Grawlix Podcast. What kind of apocalypse is happening in the background, Melanie? It's not. What kind of apocalypse is happening in the background there? It's not super loud, but there's kind of like a weird, ominous tone that comes through occasionally.
I think it's just the regular kind, The regular, like, I think it's time for, the good guys and the bad guys to have a war, so you duke it out, see who can win, take over, and rule everything. And then if it doesn't happen, then we'll try again, like, some other time, in another couple of thousand years type of thing,
I hope that it works out for us.